Hi, my name is Nigel Maynard, Editor-in-Chief of Drugstore News, and welcome to our ongoing video series where we interview thought leaders in retail pharmacy. Today, our guest is Omar Abdelsamad, Executive Director of Patient Recruitment Clinical Trial Services at CVS Health. Omar, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Great to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So let's just jump right into it. CVS Health entered the clinical drug trial space in 2021, and recently you announced a partnership with ProKidney. Can you tell us what's different about this new collaboration with ProKidney and tell us a little bit about the specifics?
Yeah, since we launched in 2021, we've continued to grow and innovate on our goals of advancing clinical research while making clinical research more accessible to the US population. So to date, that means we've outreached to over 50 million patients and we've enrolled just over 30,000. So ProKidney and other similar studies we've launched this year represent our movement into a newer therapeutic area for us, chronic kidney disease. But it's an area that's critical in terms of clinical research as an area of study, but also one with significant demographic inequities in diagnosis, treatment, and access to research. So this study in particular, the drug product React from ProKidney is a very promising drug, shows good phase 2 results for the potential to slow, if not reverse the decline in renal functions for diabetics. So it's a very exciting CKD study to be a part of. So what CVS is doing is we're recruiting patients around the 39 sites that are involved in this trial. And we're deploying our most advanced analytics to date, things like machine learning models, to bring this trial not only to our insured population, but also to our retail pharmacy population. And while it's early in our participation in this study, CVS patients have already responded to outreach, agreed to be pre-screened, and actually are scheduled to come into those sites in the coming weeks.
Okay, so can you expand on that a little bit? So how will clinical trial services recruit patients for the study? And can you tell us a little bit more about the machine learning aspect of it?
Yeah, certainly. So there's really two big aspects to this. One is how we target the patients, and the other is how we actually outreach to those patients. So in terms of targeting, there's really two main criteria here. It is patients with CKD, with chronic kidney disease, but also patients who have diabetes. So diabetes, that is something we've worked on for years, very easy for us to identify in both the pharmacy population and the insurance population. But when it comes to CKD, while it's fairly straightforward in our insurance population, it's much more complicated when it comes to the retail pharmacy population. So what we actually utilize in this situation is a machine learning model. So we take data that we have access to as an integrated healthcare provider, which allows us to see a patient not only in the pharmacy, but also in the insurance population. And then what we do is we can say, what does a patient look like in the pharmacy who has CKD? And we build these very effective machine learning models that can identify those patients and predict that they will be in the population. And so other models we've built have been more than 80% accurate in predicting a certain therapeutic area or condition for a patient. And that's what we have deployed here.
Okay. Now, there's been a lot of talk about demographic representation in these types of studies. Can you tell us a little bit about how CVS will work to bridge the access gap when it comes to these kinds of clinical trials?
Yeah, access is really a big focus for us. Also getting patients who are less represented in trials into trials. So there's a couple stats I'll share to start. One is the stat my team talks about a lot, which is 85% of Americans have never been asked to join a clinical trial. And then two, that 85% of Americans coincidentally live within 10 miles of CVS pharmacy, one of our 10,000 locations. So I really think about representation and bringing diversity to trials in three ways. Step one is fairly simple, just ask. So those patients who may not be near an academic medical center, may not be in a big city, but are near a clinical research site, because CVS has access to these patients, we are out there, we are asking. Step two is to create culturally relevant messaging, materials, taking your materials through focus groups and other aspects where we can ensure that our outreach is culturally relevant, sensitive to the different populations that we're participating in. But since we know asking and tailoring may not be enough, we also have programs where we go into the communities, use our diversity partner network and partnerships Aetna and CVS already has, to hold community events and do education and be a part of the community on a long-term basis. So when you take all of those together, we're able to bring diverse populations into our clinical research. So if we go back to ProKidney and CKD, this is a great opportunity to apply those learnings. So for CKD, we deploy multiple channels. We use call center, email, direct mail, and we definitely see in an age group as broad as this, where participants can be from age 30 to age 80, that you really have to use a mix of channels, because there are those patients who will only enroll via a phone call, and there are those patients who will only want an email and to do things more passively with us. It's all built off of learnings we had during COVID-19 when we set up our COVID testing network, where when we did community centers where we were targeting lower income and racially diverse patients, we found that actually many patients did not want to even leave a cell phone number or access a digital site to get their COVID test. We found that giving them the option to call in, leave their information, schedule that way was more effective. And we've brought all those learnings and continue to bring learnings into how we approach diverse populations.
Yeah, okay, great. So the final question today is, what does the future of clinical trials in community pharmacy look like? And what could it mean for patients and treatments going forward?
Yeah, so I'll bring up another couple stats here. So those stats are about 5% of the US population actually participates in clinical research studies. And then 80% of studies, conversely, don't meet their enrollment deadlines, whether enough patients in time or ever fill enough patients to get to the result they need. So what that means for us is, how do we make clinical trials a part of a daily conversation? So we take the healthcare site that Americans visit the most, the retail pharmacy. We take the healthcare provider that is the most trusted provider consistently in surveys, the pharmacist, and we bring them into that educational journey, that discussion about how clinical trials can be a daily part of folks' lives. Now, it's a long journey, but we will be able to expose clinical trials to more folks, get more folks to apply to clinical trials, get more folks to participate in clinical trials. So what we know from our research is that 80% of Americans are at least interested in learning more, not necessarily ready to enroll, but they want to learn more about clinical trials. So that goes back to my previous point about just ask. Step one is really asking. And what we've done since we started a couple years ago is that we've actually asked 15% of the US population whether they would like to join a clinical trial. We've exposed a clinical trial to them. So in an environment where only 5% participate and 85% feel like they never been asked, CVS alone is meaningfully moving that number of participation that ask for patients in the country.
Great. All right, Omar, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nigel. I enjoyed it.
All right, have a good day.